Thanks for watching the Carolina Justice Report today. I'm Rainey Romero, and today we're talking about the George Floyd protest that happened here in Myrtle Beach in 2020. I'm being joined with attorneys Amy Lawrence and Sharde Crawford. How are you doing, ladies?
Doing good. Pretty good.
So you two specifically are here today because you handled these Black Lives cases that just were settled, right?
Yeah, it was a Black Lives Matter, is what we want to always say, but it was a George Floyd protest that happened May 31st of 2020 in reaction to the death of George Floyd in Minnesota that we saw all across the country. And we had a peaceful protest here in Myrtle Beach. And a bunch of young men and women got arrested, and we took on the cases pro bono because the First Amendment matters. And it was like one of the biggest accomplishments, but also like joys that we got to help people in that way.
You know, I always joke, but it's not a joke. We're defenders of the Constitution.
Yeah.
As defense attorneys, you are... one of your main roles is to be a defender of the Constitution. And this group of cases really allowed us to do that.
Yeah.
The First Amendment gives us the right to peaceably assemble and to petition our government for redress of grievances. And what that means is we can peaceably assemble and tell our government when we have problems. And at the point when George Floyd was murdered, when we take it back to 2 years ago,
Right.
there was a whole string of African Americans who were murdered at the hands of police for no reason.
Right.
You know, the media can tell you it was all kinds of reasons, but it was for no reasons. Breonna Taylor was killed just a few weeks before, I think less than 2 weeks before George Floyd was then murdered by police. And so just 6 days after George Floyd's murder and this whole string of individuals who were killed at the hands of police brutality, citizens from all around the country decided to protest.
Ahmed was one of those too, right?
Yeah.
Ahmed Arbery, or was that his name?
Aubrey came after.
It came like
Came
a couple days after, yeah.
Okay.
And so when they were protesting in Myrtle Beach, even though maybe in other parts of the country it had gotten contentious, I would say, in Myrtle Beach, they were peaceably protesting when all of our clients were arrested.
Yeah, and I know like the first thing everybody thinks is we think of like New York, right, where people are like throwing things and
Right.
looting. There was none of that going on here at all. They were peacefully protesting. They were saying words that the police officers didn't like no justice, no peace. Like we were, police brutality is real. Like these are the things that happen here, and it made them feel very uncomfortable. And then, and they didn't like it. The police didn't like it. And so, we saw all these people get arrested for the things they were saying. And like the First Amendment matters. Freedom of speech is like honored and cherished. And we take an oath to uphold the Constitution. So, we like geeked out a little bit, like excited about
So
defending the
I'm
Constitution.
confused. Like, what happened on that day? What was kind of the
catalyst.
Well, yeah, like what happened to get them arrested and how did that escalate like that?
So everything, it started off that morning, like super chill, like just walking and
The clients
singing
and other members of Myrtle Beach, they met at City Hall. They had kind of like a summit, like a forum where they talked about what was going on. And then they decided that they were going to walk in protest at the same time. They were joined by police officers, the chief of police, and they walked with them and guided them along the streets of Myrtle Beach, peaceably protesting. Later in the afternoon, they started to go back towards Joe White Avenue or 10th Avenue in Myrtle Beach, right in front of the police department. And as they all kind of congregated in that area, and were still peaceably assembling, all of a sudden, there was a shift.
Yeah, and what's crazy is when you watch the videos, you see the police, they block off the street so everybody could be in the street, right? They block off the street, and all the protesters they weren't even in the street. They were like in the bike lane and then in front of the police department on the sidewalk. But like the shift changes, and what really brings about that catalyst is all of a sudden, you've got 100 police officers come out in riot gear, and it hasn't been. I mean, when I watch the videos, I mean, I'm seeing them huddling around and praying, right?
Because what's so hard when you're watching the videos is you sit down and you think back to 2 years ago, because now that we're kind of further away from that time, you kind of forget where exactly we were on May 31st of 2020. But where we were was 6 days prior, there was a black man who was on camera being assaulted by a police officer. He sat on this man's neck for, they debate, but at least 8 minutes. And this man cried out for his dead mother and told this officer over and over that he could not breathe.
Right.
And this officer continued to kneel on his neck until this man died. And now we can say, we know for sure that this police officer was convicted of murder. He murdered this man. But because of social media and because this was all recorded, we as Americans saw it happen. And I'm going to tell you, I still to this day cannot watch it. I cannot watch it all the way through to the end. So, you know, people start congregating and they're protesting, which we have the right to do, our constitutional right to do. I think we so often talk about our constitutional rights and Second Amendment, and we want to have our guns and all of that. But what we also need to remember is that we have the ability to peaceably assemble and to tell our government when we have a problem. And that's what people were doing. And yet in response to that, you have officers coming out in riot gear, in military fatigues, with helmets on, with shields up protecting them. They've got machine guns and assault rifles for these peaceable protests. And what do you think that did to the tensions?
Yeah. It raised them.
Okay. And as you know, individuals, our clients are being arrested for no reason, for standing on a sidewalk, which is a public place.
Well, is that what happened?
Yes.
It just started, they just
And
started.
this is verified by video.
Oh, it's on video. Right.
So
You're
they were just
standing on-
randomly started arresting people for being there, not doing anything.
So I think that was like the shift, and like we went from like praying and like laying quietly in the street, because that was like the protest that we saw across the country, is that like people just laying down, right?
Right.
We saw that. I mean, in Denver, police officers were laying with them. I mean, it was like really powerful stuff because it was quiet, but it like meant so much, right?
Right,
Like
yeah.
we should be able to like lay and not have someone kneel on our neck.
Right.
This is like basic humanity. And we see an officer kind of lose his shit, and he shoves a kid and knocks him to the ground, and then 5 officers pile on top of him, and that's when the arrests just start happening. Because and this is they all knew better. Like, these are people who are trained, right? And they lost it, and that was like that was the real catalyst to how this kind of like all the arrests started happening after all these officers come out and with machine guns and military fatigues. And you know, there's this talk of like, let's go less lethal. Let's go less lethal? Are you kidding me? Like, we can throw a triple chaser. Look, you know, we hear comments of police officers, you know, we need a good old fire truck to come barreling through here. You know, and you're like, what? Like, this was not that kind of.
And if you could see these clients, these young people who are just so full of love and light, who are small, small in stature, 115 pounds soaking wet.
Yeah, the kid who got knocked down is like literally 115 pounds soaking wet. And he's just, and you watch the video, he didn't even speak during the whole protest. He's just there. And we asked him, we said, Noah, like, why did you go there that day? And he said, I just knew. I knew that, like, I had to say that wasn't okay. Like, what happened to that man wasn't okay, and what's happening to black men and women across the country was not okay. And so I went. And even though, like, he's this, like, really quiet guy, like, he just being there meant something. And so to watch him get thrown to the ground and officers tackle him for standing in a sidewalk, it was just more than everybody could handle. And so, like, you heard, it was exactly what they were protesting.
Yeah.
That was, you know what I mean? And so then you had all these other protesters who were young and idyllic, and God bless them. They were just like, I just love them. They're like some of my favorite people in this world. And when they saw that, they called the police officers out for what they were doing. And they didn't like that either. And so then they got arrested. I mean, we have one little, she's not a little girl, but to me, she's a kid.
Yeah.
I could be your mother. They called, they didn't tell anybody about the curfew until like really late, until after the curfew had already like been into effect. And there's this young woman who is like chanting all the way. She's getting in her car, she's opening up her car, and then some officer says some horrible thing to her. And she says, "I'm not fucking afraid of you." And then he, as she's sitting down in her car, pulls her from the car and is thrown to the ground. And then he charges her with a curfew violation. You don't tell anybody about the curfew until after the curfew, and then you throw her to the ground when she's trying to leave?
2 minutes after
2 minutes after you tell her about the curfew? Like, that's insane. And so we held Myrtle Beach City accountable.
So how many were arrested? I know that you guys handled 8 cases. Was that everybody that was arrested?
No, there were way more arrests, but we represented 8 people.
Yeah, I think there were like 20 some.
Okay. And what were they arrested for? Like, were they spending time in jail or?
Some of them were arrested for disorderly conduct. Yeah, these were not tickets. They were taken to jail, handcuffed, thrown to the ground. Actually, they weren't even handcuffed. They were zip tied, which I thought was ridiculous. Thrown to the ground, zip tied, and then hauled off to jail. And they were, our clients had mainly 2 different charges, and it was either disorderly conduct or
Violation of an executive order.
Yeah, of the curfew.
For the curfew.
And so we took all of them to trial 2 years later. And the first case, we got a directed verdict, which means halfway through, the prosecutor puts on his case. Halfway through that case, they rested, and the judge said that there was not enough evidence. And we had a very conservative judge, and for him to give, directed verdicts are very rare. But I think that
They are.
it spoke volumes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Spoke how ridiculous the
This
charge was. Yeah.
And we talked to the jury after,
I
and
did.
they were so great. They were so cute.
I
I loved them all.
I asked the guy, I was like, well, just tell me what you would have decided had this case made it to you. And he said, oh, absolutely not guilty. And everybody who was there was going to say the same thing. He's like, it was very clear on that video that your client was attacked and tackled to the ground, and he didn't do anything. And he said, and I realized after watching all of the videos that all of the tension was created by the police when they came out in the riot gear and the military fatigues with the assault rifles, and it could have been handled a different way. And he said, and there were way more police officers there than protesters.
There were more errors.
If I was a
than there were
protester, I would have been scared.
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
and it seemed like the police were scared,
I think,
which is,
life's not black and white, right?
Right.
We know that. And I'm not giving people a pass, okay? But I think we learned through this whole thing is that there was a fear that kind of like was shaking through the police department about what was to come. And because they were getting like 3 deep from top down, that there were these credible threats of busloads of rioters and looters coming.
Right.
That never came, right? That never,
Right.
like, and so we heard all these things, and like there's this really bad guy, and he's saying all this stuff on Facebook about how he's gonna like go to the Walmart and like all this stuff. Well, because through all this discovery, we had to fight to get it tooth and nail for 2 years. I mean, they were giving us discovery up until like the Friday before trial, and we started on Monday. We realized that like all these threats were like stupid. They were just stupid.
They're
They were
baseless.
completely silly. They were silly is the word. Like there is like the credible, like the guy who's like threatening Walmart. It was like when you look at it, he's a business owner. He's a college, like he graduated from college, and he's like it's a joke. He's like, heard Walmart saying something like laughy face. It was a joke, right? It's just him being funny. He was there at the protest, but it was just a joke. Like you realize that it's like he's trying to make light of things in a very like hard moment in life.
Yeah.
None of this was like serious, and like the busloads of people coming to riot and everything. Okay, so Karen, literally, that was her name. She calls down from Market Common, and she wants everybody to know that she is seen on Facebook from a very credible source, that they are coming, and she just wants everybody to know that she has a gun, and no one on her street has a gun, but she's going to protect everybody. Like, this is like their credible threats. And so, and the average officer that's only like boots on the ground, literally fatigued, military boots on the ground, they don't know that part of it. All they know is like they've seen all this other stuff, and then like in other towns and other cities where it's gotten kind of crazy in these big cities. And then they're hearing all this stuff. They don't know that it's Karen from Market Common with a gun who saw it from a very reliable source on Facebook. You know, that's like, all they know is like the worst of it. And so I think that their tensions were very high. I think they were scared.
But I guess the part that
They don't get the luxury to be
Yes,
scared.
yeah, and that at some point you have to reconcile what you're being told with what you're seeing.
Yeah.
Right.
And so as you see these individuals who are peaceful and are telling you, I just want you to stand next to me, arm in arm, and I want you to show them how Myrtle Beach can be the example.
Yeah.
I like literally have chills running up my legs, okay, right now. But that's literally what they're saying on video is just stand with us, next to us, arm in arm, and show that Myrtle Beach can be the example, that it doesn't have to be like other cities are. Let's show them how to do this right. And this is what we're seeing, you know? So at some point you have to reconcile what's presented in front of you versus what you're hearing.
Yeah. What did my grandma say? I believe none of what you hear and half of what you see. You know what I mean? And so, and we also, you know, it goes back to think we don't think this happens in our backyard, right?
Yeah.
But it does. And the great example of that is the Julian Benton case. And this was a man who police come in, they say that they knock, but they don't. And they come in and they shoot him and they paralyze him for selling a bag of weed, right? Something that is legal in like a bunch of other states. It just was uncalled for, and the police officers lied about it, and now this man is paralyzed over it.
And but for the fact that he had cameras at his home, we wouldn't have even known what really happened. You know, so we all like to think that it's not in our neck of the woods, not in our house, but it is happening. And I think that these 8 cases and the subsequent successful results we had is, you know, yes, it happens, but it's not going to happen here. And that we're going to hold their feet to the fire and make them accountable for it. And we're going to protect the Constitution.
Yeah, and I think all we ask of police is that they do their job and tell the truth and recognize that they are appreciated, but they are also held to a standard that is higher. Just like as attorneys, we're held to a higher standard, and we should be, because that's what we're trained to do, and that's what they're trained to do. And that they don't get the luxury of being a bad apple. That it's time that they got to like step up and do the right thing.
Yeah.
Oh, do the right thing. How many times did we say that week?
Well, and we talked about kind of what
I do
happened.
it all the time. I tell you, that's like my joke. I do it all the time. I promise.
We talked about what happened with that first case, not even really going through completion. What about the other 7 that happened after that?
So we had a pretrial conference with the prosecutor. They'd hired a special prosecutor to take care of these cases. And I think he took a long look at what happened the day before. And I don't think he even really, I'm trying to be kind. I don't think he even realized what the law was when it came to free speech and what you can say and what you can't. You know, he was all upset. He's like, you just can't protest for 7 hours. That's what he said to me after the first trial. And I was like, actually, you can. You can. Matter of fact, I made a joke because there was a African-American police officer that was sitting beside of me. And I said, dang, could you imagine? Could you imagine if MLK was like, yeah, boys, pack it up. I hope we're being a little overly burdensome on the police. Like, it's been 3 hours. It's like, you know. And he said, yes, I bet I wouldn't even have any rights. I said, I bet you wouldn't. And so we can protest as long as you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just law. And so I think that he realized after being handed a lot of case law and a loss that what they did was not wrong, and that they were willing to not make us go through 7 more days of trials and do the right thing. It may have taken them 2 years to do it, but I'm glad that they did.
Well, yeah, it's crazy to me that here we go, 2 years long of kind of researching this and fighting this, and then it's just dismissed. I mean, it's great that it was dismissed because they knew it was wrong, but it's just amazing how that system works, you know? So long for them to just say, yeah, that was wrong. This shouldn't have happened. It's
Justice
crazy.
was delayed. And, you know, they say that justice delayed is justice denied. And a part of that is true, but there's a part that isn't.
Yeah.
And I'm always grateful when people see the error of their ways to take accountability and to do the right thing.
Yep.
And so I'm not going to fault Myrtle Beach for doing that.
Yep.
I think that was the commendable and the right thing to do. And I can acknowledge and appreciate that.
Yeah. So you guys, you vindicated these clients and got them out of that.
Put a W on the board for the First Amendment.
Yes. And
Yeah.
you guys did this pro bono, which I think is amazing. And how did these clients feel after that was over?
Oh, they were so happy.
They were crying.
Yeah, they were crying.
Because some of them had lost their jobs. Like, they were young, 20, 21 years old, and some of them had gotten jobs doing the census. And that paid really good, like really good. And because they'd gotten arrested during that protest wrongfully, they'd lost their jobs. Their life shifted. They weren't able to get clearance to like volunteer at the school. There's all these things that came with it and I think that's what people really don't realize is that like, when you're arrested, all this collateral damage comes, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's you lose your driver's license and then it snowballs and then, you can't volunteer, you lose your job or you lose your license and like these things. And then all of a sudden you can't work and then you can't pay rent. So these things have consequences and they paid a price for it.
Yeah.
For 2 years.
For 2 years. And they deserve better.
Yeah. It's definitely the other side you don't think about for sure.
As we sat through trial the first day, our client, he continually would tap me and say, do I have to testify? He was so scared that he was going to have to testify just because the thought, it's already this anxiety inducing when you're on trial for something. And he was so scared that he was going to have to get up in front of those jurors and everyone in the courtroom to just tell his story. And although he wanted to tell his story because he wanted to be cleared of those charges, he was so afraid that he was going to have to. Luckily, he didn't. But, all through trial, all those hours of sitting there all that day.
It was a long day.
Like, Sharde, do I still got to talk? You still got to talk.
Yeah. It was cute because the next trial, because we weren't sure when we would get done, if it would be like a half day trial or a whole day or whatever, and it being a whole day. But our second client that was going to go the next was there, and he was like, y'all are amazing. I'm like, this is some TV shit. Right? I'm like, I don't know if you know, it's kind of a big deal.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
So when
All females too.
Oh,
okay?
all girl team.
Please,
Yeah.
yes, all females.
It was us too. Unless we also need to give credit to Amy
credit, yeah.
Zimmercheck,
Yes.
who you guys know. We've talked about her before. We're a big fan. She's amazing, and Sarah Austin.
Yeah.
So it was an all girl.
Four
gang.
female a team.
Yeah.
Love it. Something you don't normally see, right?
Yes, no.
I love that.
We need more.
Minorities representing the minorities, right?
Yes.
I love it. So what happens when these charges are dropped? We're talking about like their record and stuff and losing jobs. Is that wiped from their?
Yeah, so it'll take about 90 days, and that those charges will be expunged off of your record. And expungement means that they get rid of all the stuff, right? So your mugshot comes down, your fingerprints go away. The report is still there, but it will not be on your NCIC report, which is your criminal background check, like through the feds, that everybody can see. So yeah, it all gets expunged off your record.
I was always curious about how that worked because it's the digital footprint is so hard to kind of
Well, I
get
think
rid of.
that's the hard part is that their faces are on the news forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you Google their name, that's the first thing that comes up, that they were arrested.
Yeah.
During this protest.
I used to work in TV and we would get emails all the time like, hey, this case got dropped. Can you please take down this story? And they would have to require that they gave them proof and all stuff. It was a whole process to even get them removed, get that story
And a lot of
removed.
news, we have some great legislation in South Carolina that requires it. That if you you see these companies that put your mugshot up on the internet just to make money. So that's required. And so a lot of news, which I think is really commendable, agencies will honor that and do the same thing. But a lot of them won't.
A lot of them won't.
Yeah.
A lot of them won't take it down.
Yeah.
They say, well, it was the news at that time and it is what it is. You
Yeah.
know, we can edit on there and say it was dropped, but the story's staying up.
Yeah.
So, it's just, it sticks with you. Even if it gets dropped, they'll carry that with them forever. So, well, any other thoughts on this story? Great job, you guys. I loved seeing it
Girl
come
gang
through.
strikes again.
Yes, yes. What do you have anything to
Hashtag
say
girl
to
gang.
folks that may experience kind of civil rights violations or anything like this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Call us. We do those cases. We do them criminally. We do them civilly, and we'll take a look at everything and see if you have a case or we can help you. And we're all in.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, ladies, so much, especially for the work you're doing in the community. All right, guys. Well, let us know if you have any questions or comments on this. Of course, you can visit us online at justiceslovely.com. We're also anywhere that you consume your media. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Of course, we have so much content up on YouTube. We can literally answer almost any question up on our YouTube page, so check that out. Thank you so much for watching the Carolina Justice Report. We'll see you next Tuesday.
When life